you've had a really busy week, sing with us.
You know the words now.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is just another typical Shabbat, except that there are some unique elements to this evening and to this weekend, certainly for our family. But first and foremost tonight, we're thrilled to have Noah Fromson, some regulars, some semi-regulars. Noah Fromson, who joined us this weekend. We're thrilled to have Noah here for the Shabbat. Mickey as well. I think some other special guests that are back there that we'll get to see later and hear later. And personally for me, to have two of my closest friends and people who've known me longer than I've known Hannah. Rabbi Josh Winston, who will be joining us this evening to add to some of the prayer and music, and Rabbi Danny Berkman, who will be giving us the sermon this evening. Both people who are as close to us as family, and so it's really a great honor to see friends and colleagues and people who have seen our family grow in so many ways, to be able to be in this place that our family knows is so special to us. So thank you all for being there. And then there's this young woman, Hannah, who will also do a few things this evening. And so it is, again, both as a rabbi, but more so as a father, lovely to have Hannah join us on the Bima and lead us in some of our prayers. We'll start by inviting Elaine Newman to share a couple upcoming events and announcements, and then we'll begin by lighting our candles.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the Brown and Lewin families. So, this is my last time on the Bima as president, and I got no announcements on paper. So, I have one thing to say. Mitzvah day is over. It was a success. Tomorrow is finally Hannah Brown's bat mitzvah. I won't have to say that again. So mazel tov in advance. And Tuesday night is our installation. Hopefully you all made your reservations. If not, just come to the meeting at 7 o'clock. It'll be a wonderful night. And to everybody here, thank you for being here. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We get on page 2 in our prayer books as I invite Carrie and Hannah and Ezra and Noah to join me as we light our Shabbat candles and raise our glass to bless Kiddush. Pages 2 and 4.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Page 4. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shavak kodesho, ve'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu. זיכרון למעשי וראשית, כי הוא ים תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדיש השבת. אמן. לחיים.
I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. For God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics or services, but we do. And so we, through prayer, sense our inner strength and our inner purpose, our inner joy, and our capacity to love. For to love God is to love each other. To love God is to love the world God created. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy, and to work to perfect those things, to find that peace and that joy, and to bring those visions to life. It's so wonderful to be together, and so we start with these words, page 10, Hine Ma Tov. Let us find that joy with one another.
Hine Ma Tov u'manayim, sheverachim gam yachad. 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 Sheverachim gam yachad. Sheverachim gam yachad.
I invite Rabbi Winston to join Cantor Kathy in leading us in L'chad Odi, our prayer that invites us to welcome Shabbat, as we take a moment to think back to where we were a week ago, to all that we've accomplished, to what has happened in these 6 days, like the days of creation. How have we created worlds? How have we perhaps been a part of destroying them? How can we put those curses that we've seen behind us and the blessings before us? Page 20, the words of L'chad Odi. We welcome Shabbat to make this a day of blessing.
לקראת קהלי, יללי, 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 בני שבת, נקבלה, לך אדוני, לקראת קהלי, יללי, 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 בני שבת, נקבלה. שמור וזכור ודיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, שמות תפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם לצוחה, סוף מעשה במשכבת לנו. join us, לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי ברך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נראה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת נקבל. Please rise and face the entrance to our sanctuary or to your home in body and in spirit. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובשמחה, תוך אמוני עם הסגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת נקבלה.
Please be seated. I mentioned last week that one of the blessings that's been new to me but obvious in these last weeks has been the way that the village gathers around our children as they become young adults. And certainly this Shabbat for our family is the realization of that village. People from all walks of our life, some that we met before we were married, our families, certainly congregants from the other congregations that we've served, people who knew Hannah when she was an infant, to friends that she's made in these last years. It is a gathering of a village. But gathered around the child as she takes on this great responsibility of leading the congregation, not only in teaching but also in prayer. And so it's a moving sanctuary in a way. It is a sanctuary that has moved from all sorts of times and places to make this a sacred space gathered around her. And so we'll share those words with the prayers. It's not in our prayer book, but Cantor Kathy will lead us, and many of you know the words. Prayers that especially became touching and poignant for us during the pandemic, but I think will have much more of a long-lasting effect, that we can each be a sanctuary, and we've gathered around this Shabbat to do just that. And so we invite Hannah to the bima now as we share the words of sanctuary.
Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary.
thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you.
Please turn to page 26. Okay. Vikada Shemei Rabbah. Belma divrachute v'emlich machute bechayechon uvyomechon uvchayedakol beYisrael bagala uvizman kariv v'yimeru amen Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam omeid Yibarach Vibarach Vishabach Vibar Vitramam Vinaseh Vitadar Vitale Vitala Shemeda Kudusha Barichu Leila Minko Virata Vishirata Tushbechata Venechemata Damiran Beoma Vimeru Amen. There is one who sings the song of his own life, finding everything within himself. There is one who leaves the circle of herself and sings the song of her people. There is one whose voice rings with the song of humanity, hoping for the highest perfection. And there is one who rises even higher, uniting with all creatures, with all worlds, filling the universe with song. Nevarech, let us bless. Please turn to page 28 and rise for Barhu.
La 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 la
This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? For this is the hour of change, and within it we stand here quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or shall we cross over?
Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv, Aravi.
Please be seated. Normally in our congregation, our tradition is not to be seated yet, although I'm sure no one minds. It's always been our tradition, as it is in many congregations, to remain standing through the Shema. Tonight we're doing something a little differently. The rule is actually that you can say the Shema standing or seated, so long as you're still in focus when you say it. And so it's perfectly fine to say the Shema. I want you to know there will be no lightning strikes upon anyone's head. You can say the Shema seated, and it will be fine. And that's what we'll do this evening.
I would like to invite up some special guests. We have Mickey on piano, who's been joining us for Shabbat, and my friend Leslie Fry, who is, you will recognize her from our High Holy Day Choir, and she's also in Apollo's Fire, and Laura Williams, my new friend, as of tonight, who is in the Singers Company. And we bring you the Gabriel Mann version of Ahavat Olam. Carrie, do you have enough Kleenex? Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amhavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Akir Adonai Eloheinu b'shok bi'uv kuminu nasiat bechukecha v'nizmor l'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. When we lie down, when we rise up, this joy will last forever. When we lie down, when we rise up, this joy will last forever, forever. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Any takers? Page 34. Yisrael, Adonai
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיהם. אני אדוני אלוהיהם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we're on page 39. We still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, and that the winding way to that promise passes through a wilderness. And we still believe that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. And when we do, when we find freedom as part of our destination, we're told that our ancestors sung out in this song, and so we share it now, page 40, Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha va'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot oseh vele, nora tehilot oseh vele. Malachutecha ra'uvanecha, v'keyayam lifnei Moshe, ze'elianu ve'amaru, ze'elianu ve'amaru, Adonai yimloch le'olam ba'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam ba'ed. Mi chamocha va'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot oseh vele, nora tehilot oseh vele.
I met Rabbi Winston, Josh, at a Jewish summer camp in Northern California. It was a place where two rabbis, a little ahead of us, a little older than we are, where they had spent the summers and they had come up with a number of songs. Luckily for them, they were both musical. In our case, only one of us is musical. But those two friends, one of whom's also named Josh, those two friends created a tune to Hashkivenu that then became the adopted tune of the camp. And it was the song that, the prayer that we sang to the children every night as we would put them to bed. And then as Josh and I had our own families, it became the song that we sang to our children. And so when we visit each other's families, it's often a song that we share together. They're better parents than we are, so they still sing to their children. So when the Winstons come to Akron or we go to Ann Arbor, it's always a great blessing to share this particular prayer with them, and it's a great honor to have Josh, Rabbi Winston, share it with our congregation and with our families now. Hashkivenu, our prayer to love and hold tight our children as day turns to evening, to hold on to them tightly and remind them that the evening doesn't have to be scary. In fact, tomorrow brings great optimism. Page 42 in our prayer books.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right.
Page 46, we rise for our Amidah.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, Elohim, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Hozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mechayei hakol atah rav lahoshia, morid hatal, mechakel chayim bechesed, mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim verofech olim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar micha mocha mal gevurot umida melach melech meimit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman atah lahachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol.
Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kdoshim b'chol yom yahalalu chasala baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. Page 59. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, for wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us, for all these and more. We say these words, Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulcha na'eh lehodot. Blessed are you, God, who gives us the ability to be grateful for what we have and what we see in our world. Page 60, our prayer for the most abundant source of peace to find its way into our lives and into our world. Page 60.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Ki ata Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
Please take a few moments for silent reflection.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru. Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, amen.
We turn to page 253 in our prayer books. Having offered our words of peace for the world around us, we now think of those people in our lives who are facing their own struggles, and we offer them these words as we pray for them that they find their way back to the fullest sense of themselves. Our prayer for healing, Misha Berach, page 253.
Avotenu, souls in need of healing, with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And let us say
I met Rabbi Berkman in Israel during our year in Israel, and then we truly came to know each other best as we were roommates in the former Soviet Union for the week of Passover. We signed up for a trip while we were living in Israel to go help people who were living in the former Soviet Union to celebrate Passover, in large part because the generations prior hadn't had the freedom to do so, and they didn't really know what to do. And so we boarded a plane, and we got the lucky draw by far. Not only because we could say it would be nice if I said we got the lucky draw because that's where we were paired up as roommates, and we became friends who now talk almost every day. But we really got the lucky draw because we got St. Petersburg. So some people were sent to Uzbekistan or something. Everybody wanted to go to St. Petersburg, and somehow we got to go to St. Petersburg, which is a beautiful city, and we had a wonderful time there teaching people about Passover and getting to know each other, and we've been dear friends ever since. And like the Winston family, we've watched each other's families grow. Part of what makes Danny unique as a rabbi in America is that he did not grow up in America, he grew up in London. And he was raised not only by a British father, as you would expect, but by an Israeli mother. And so he has family around the world. He's been very involved with the World Union for Progressive Judaism, and he now serves a congregation just outside of Boston. But Danny has always, Rabbi Berkman, I should say, has always remained very much in touch with what is happening in the world, and has always been my go-to person to try to understand. When we try to reach beyond our echo chambers and our little village here to understand what world Jewry is doing, his perspective has always been one that I've relied on. And so I thought tonight it would be great to ask him to share that perspective with us in the place that we are in our world today. So it's a great honor to invite Rabbi Berkman to share our bima.
Shabbat Shalom. It is such a joy to be with you all this evening. I have live streamed services and seen Rabbi Brown and Cantor Kathy leading from this bimah, but I was never sure of who was actually joining in with them in prayer and song. And so it's lovely to be able to see all of your faces and be with you this weekend, and especially the immense joy of celebrating Hannah becoming a bat mitzvah. I'm thrilled that I can be here. When Rabbi Brown asked me, or more accurately told me, that I would be preaching this evening, he also shared the subject that he wanted me to talk about and told me that Temple Israel practice is for sermons of 30 minutes or so. So I hope you're sitting comfortably. I was tempted to just go off script and tell you about Rabbi Brown at rabbinic school, but maybe we can chat at the Oneg about that. As he mentioned, we got to know each other in Israel and the former Soviet Union, and I do remember a much younger Rabbi Brown trying to communicate with the local Russian Jewish community. It wasn't easy. We shared no common language. Their English was limited and our Russian was non-existent. But as you can imagine, with his broad smile and the warmth that he emanates, he was able to bond with that community without either side understanding a word of what they were actually saying. At that time, 17 years ago, there was a need for rabbinic students from America studying in Israel to go to Russia to support them in celebrating Passover. Today, they have their own Reform Rabbinical School, and they are nurturing homegrown leaders to serve these communities. So when you ask, what's the state of world Jewry today? On the one hand, it's good, and on the other hand, it's not so good. So before we start with the present, let's go back in time And in the 1930s, a dark joke was told about a rabbi in Germany who was reading the Nazi paper called Der Stürmer. A congregant came up to him, astonished, and said, "Rabbi, how can you be reading that Nazi rag filled with libels of the worst kind? Are you some kind of masochist or, God forbid, a self-hating Jew?" "On the contrary," the rabbi responded, "when I used to read the Jewish papers, all I learned about were pogroms, riots in Palestine, and assimilation in America. But now that I read Der Stürmer, I see that the Jews control all the banks, we pull all the strings in the art world, in cinema, and that we're on the verge of taking over the entire world. You know, it makes me feel a whole lot better." While we are thankfully not living in 1930s Germany, this dark joke offers a reminder of what the state of world Jewry was less than a century ago. And while echoes of those ideas may unfortunately still be present today, it's important to begin by recognizing how far our global community has come. For all of the challenges of this moment, we are living in a very different world than our ancestors. Yes, anti-Semitism is more visible today. Yes, voices of hate and prejudice are growing louder across the globe. And yes, there are legitimate reasons for concern. But when we consider the situation of world Jewry, it's important to recognize that our current context isn't all that bad. The creation of the State of Israel changed the equation for the global Jewish community. The experience of the Holocaust shifted dynamics within the Christian world and led to the rejection of anti-Jewish tropes and ideas which had once been mainstream in the church. And in most parts of the globe, with Jewish communities, they maintain good relations with political and civic leaders to ensure that the community is a valued and protected part of their societies. I remember hearing Rabbi Danny Freelander speak in 2015 as the then head of the World Union for Progressive Judaism. His basic message, which still rings true today, is that extremist politics is never good for the Jews. It doesn't matter whether you're on the right or the left of the political spectrum. We unfortunately know all too well that the extreme right and the extreme left tend to unite around one subject: their dislike of Jews. While they come to their anti-Jewish positions from very different assumptions, they end up as peculiar bedfellows in their attacks and challenges to the Jewish community. Today, globally, the growing extremism in political discourse, not just here in America, but in many parts of the world, is unfortunately a cause for concern for our Jewish communities. While we can debate and discuss the different ways that they relate to the Jewish community, what is clear is that extremism is not good, and extremism today is on the rise. When the democratic center is threatened, the Jewish community is, by extension, also under threat. And the rise in extremism can even be seen today in the case of Israeli politics. The current Israeli government is the most extreme in her 75-year history. This is an ultra-Orthodox, extreme right-wing coalition. Parties who were once considered too extreme to be included in the government now hold ministerial positions. The most obvious example is Itamar Ben-Gvir, the leader of Otzma Yehudit, which translates as the Jewish Power Party. He is a disciple of the late Meir Kahane, who was once banned from Israeli politics. And he is just one of the extremist voices in that coalition. The reforms that they are currently suggesting and pushing forward in the Israeli judicial system are in line with the anti-democratic movements in countries like Turkey and Hungary. The state of Israel today is at a dangerous inflection point, and it is not clear how she will emerge from this moment of crisis. Given that Israel is home to the largest Jewish population, we cannot ignore what is happening there as we consider the state of world Jewry. The pessimist would warn that the current government holding a majority can really do anything that they want, while the optimist might suggest that this has caused an awakening in Israel as people take to the streets to protest on a weekly basis and to assert their commitment to Israel as a democratic country. It's not clear how this story will end yet. And what happens in Israel has ripples and affects the entire global Jewish community. In 2019, President Isaac Herzog, who was then the chair of the Jewish Agency, addressed the URJ Biennial on the subject of challenges facing global Judaism. To his mind, the primary challenge was how do we prevent an irreversible rift between the two major communities of Israel, with 7 million Jews, and North America, with 7 million Jews. This was 4 years ago. And if anything, the divide between our two communities has only grown in the intervening years. I don't think that we here give enough attention to the fact that a thriving, vibrant, democratic Israel is actually a source of strength for the American Jewish community. The current political turmoil there has an effect on all of us. And while we cannot allow it to diminish our love for the people and the land of Israel, it's complicated. How do we relate to an Israeli government with ministers who hurl the most vicious insults at our stream of Judaism? How do we respond to coalition members who propose hateful policies against minorities? And how do we understand a government that seeks to undermine Israel's democratic foundations? There are ripples across the globe from what is happening in Israel. And over her 75 years of existence, generally, Israel has been an undeniable source of strength for world Jewry. But it's also clear that in recent years, the way that the extreme left relates to her has complicated that dynamic. In Britain, when Jeremy Corbyn became the leader of the Labour Party, he would frequently criticize the state of Israel and associate with terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah and Hamas. The rhetoric he used to criticize the state of Israel would often be anti-Semitic in nature, and he often slipped from criticizing Israel to criticizing Jews. And with Mr. Corbyn as the leader, he also attracted others from the extreme left to the Labour Party. The second largest party in British politics became a place that did not welcome Jews, and Jewish members left in their droves. It offers us a cautionary tale about the way in which anti-Israel attitudes by some on the extreme left can eventually develop into full-blown anti-Semitism. In his book, Jews Don't Count, David Baddiel wrote about the way that Jews are treated in British society, and I think it resonates in much of the world. His basic premise is that Jews don't fit neatly into the boxes that people want to put us in. While acknowledging that there are many Jews of color, he suggests that Jews are often viewed as Schrodinger's whites. They are white or non-white, depending on the politics of the observer. The extreme right stresses that we are not white, and the extreme left pushes the myth of the supposed power of the Jews and imagines that we are the very epitome of being white. In the British Labour Party under Corbyn, Jews were considered part of the elite white society and were therefore part of the problem. The good news is that despite several difficult years, Jeremy Corbyn was eventually replaced as leader, and there was a thorough investigation into this sorry period. His anti-Semitism was even an issue nationally at the general election, at which his party was resoundingly defeated. And thankfully, his successor has made a priority of repairing relations with the Jewish community. So what is the state of world Jewry today? It remains complicated. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, with the birth of the State of Israel, I think it's fair to say that the second half of the 20th century was very good for world Jewry. We re-established our homeland, with Israel as the plucky underdog making the desert bloom. Across the globe, people were sadly aware of where anti-Semitism could lead, and so the Jews were largely protected. And despite the horrors of the Holocaust, in that second half of the century, we could see Jewish life across Europe re-emerging and re-establishing itself, especially after the fall of the Iron Curtain. The last 20 years or so have been more difficult, but that's against the backdrop of a world that has changed. And today we must be aware of rising levels of anti-Semitism, threats to the state of Israel, and we haven't even begun to talk about the internal challenges which the Jewish community faces. But we need to gain perspective and remember what was going on just under 100 years ago. Because if we could go back to 1930s Germany and tell the people about the Jewish community in America and thriving Reform synagogues like the one you have here and across this country, if we could tell them about the state of Israel and what has been established there in Start-up Nation, and if we could talk about all of those European Jewish communities that are reestablishing, re-engaging, and re-emerging, they'd be pretty impressed at where the Jewish community is today. And so, yes, we need to be vigilant. Yes, there is cause for concern. But overall, today, the state of world Jewry is very good, in my opinion. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi Berkman, for words of wisdom and for allowing me not to write a sermon today. The many gifts. Continuing our prayer books, page 282, please rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'atei gedula liatzer reshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad.
Please be seated. Our thoughts turn now to those who've departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and of death. This week, we recall the life of Margaret Ellen Whitmer, whose family is still in the period of Shloshim, having lost her in this last month. So too we remember those that we lost at this time in years past: I. Allen Barnett, Milton Cohen, Saul Henkin, Estelle Hollander, Daisy Weil Jacobs, Dr. Morris Kalman, Max Katz, Gwen Kirkman, Julius G. Kohler, Lawrence Latimer, Henry Landskroner, Herbert Lazaro, Joseph Levy, Joel Levin, Isaac Lieberman, Phyllis Polsky, Nancy Rebeck, Saul Riegel, Morris Reichenstein, Barbara Rosenfeld, Sylvia Rosenthal, Katie Rossen, Libby Schneer, Harry Schechter, Ida Sigalo, George Sugarman, Marvin Mickey Sussman, and Julia Kaplan Wine. If there are names I mispronounced or names you'd like to add, please share them. We remember our loved ones as we rise, page 294. We join together in the words of Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, B'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya, Yit barak v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh, V'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, Shemei dekudusha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, huya asei shalom, aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Having connected with those that we've loved and lost, we connect with each other now as we bless each other with the words of the priests. May God bless you and keep you.
Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May God's light shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May you feel God's presence within you always, and may you find peace. Please be seated as we'll take a moment to share Shechianu moments. If there are blessings in your life this week, Joe, fire away loudly.
Last Saturday, I donated blood, and in doing so, I achieved 50 gallons.
So repeat for everybody. Joe Reed, you told me this the other day in preparation. You've been donating blood for how long?
Since 1986.
So since 1986, and he reached the 15-gallon mark. I'm guessing nobody can beat that. So Mazel Tov. Good job. Other someone's Barbara.
June 9th, today is a very special day for me. 52 years ago, my son was born. He's my favorite rock star. 39 years ago was his bar mitzvah, and today I bought a new car.
Ah, well done. Well done. 64th wedding anniversary. Well done. Wonderful. What's the trick? Are we allowed to know? No? Yeah.
Be nice.
Jocelyn.
I don't mean to upstage Hannah, but I got promoted.
Well done.
Yay.
That works. That works. Good job.
Well, I got a new bracelet.
For a special occasion, perhaps?
Yeah, tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going out to lunch with my friends.
Well done. So for all the lunches with hundreds of friends that happen right after you read Torah, we share the words of Shechianu. For all that and all the wonderful things going on in our lives, we share our blessings with each other, and we seal them with the words of Shechianu. Please join with us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Invite my family up one more time to hold the challah as we'll share together in Motzi. We invite everybody to join us for a dessert oneg, and hopefully, if the weather's as good as it has been, we can be both in the lobby and in the Mishkan. As we'll share in some dessert in a few moments, we'll say Motzi together, and then join together in Od Yavo.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu.
Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam.
Salam.
Salam Aleinu ve'al kol olam. Salam, salam,
Salam.
salam Aleinu ve'al kol olam. Salam, salam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al